U.S. military aircraft have conducted their first airstrike on ISIS artillery targets in Iraq. The Pentagon press secretary just a short while ago has confirmed that the first airstrikes have taken place in response to an artillery attack by the ISIS. We're getting you more information on that. The U.S. military.
Right at this moment, Russian forces are massing on the border with Ukraine. If there is any movement by Russian forces across the border, it won't be a humanitarian mission, it will be an invasion.
Well, in addition to Australia, the one-year ban targets fruit, vegetables, meat, fish, milk, dairy imports in the US, the European Union, Canada and Norway. The restrictions could spell big losses for farmers in those countries. Last year, the US exported $1.3 billion.
Military backed up the Obama administration's vow to keep ISIS militants in Iraq out of a key northern city, with at least one 500-pound laser-guided bomb dropped from an American F-A-18 Super Hornet fighter jet from an aircraft carrier operating in the Persian Gulf. According to reports, two of the American jets targeted an ISIS artillery piece that was shelling Kurdish forces near Erbil. Both jets returned safely to the aircraft carrier USS George H.W. Bush after this particular interdiction mission. Sunni Islamic militants have stepped up efforts to expand their territory in northern Iraq, and their successes this week against what was thought to be the superior fighting force in the oil-rich semi-autonomous Kurdish region prompted President Obama to threaten these airstrikes. Let's listen to the president for a moment. Okay, going to bring in Editor of Strategic Affairs Gaurav Sawant for more on the story. Gaurav, significant development here. The US saying they're not going to send back troops to Iraq to fight this particular situation, but they've launched their first airstrike from an aircraft carrier on ISIS positions in northern Iraq.
And it's better late than never. This was desperately required. Americans launched this offensive when they found American interests were at stake. American interests were at risk, especially in Erbil. Now, this is an area that has considerable American presence. You'd recall, Shiv, when American officials were evacuated from Baghdad, when they were evacuated from this region, they were taken to the Kurdish territory. They were taken to Erbil. That is where they were considered safe. But just when ISIS launched its offensive and started heading north, just when they appeared to be a stone throw distance from Erbil, the Americans had no alternative but to launch an attack. An air attack has been launched. Two 500-pounder bombs have been dropped on mobile artillery. Now, this is just the first, many say, first in a series of offensives, air offensives against the ISIS, Shiv.
And I just want to read out the tweet from the Pentagon press secretary, Rear Admiral John Kirby, a short while ago. He said US military aircraft conduct strike on ISIS artillery. Artillery was used against Kurdish forces defending Erbil near US personnel. So obviously this is a defensive strike, Gaurav. They've clarified, President Obama has in fact clarified just a short while ago that no fresh troops are going to be sent back into Iraq. This was an expeditionary exercise. Two F-A-18 fighter jets carrying 500-pound laser-guided, precision-guided munitions flew into northern Iraq and deployed their weapons. We're going to try and get you some pictures in a short while from now of that particular attack. Meanwhile, let's listen to what President Obama had said about authorizing airstrikes in Iraq.
Today I authorized two operations in Iraq. Targeted airstrikes to protect our American personnel, and a humanitarian effort to help save thousands of Iraqi civilians who are trapped on a mountain without food and water and facing almost certain death. Let me explain the actions we're taking and why. First, I said in June, as the terrorist group ISIL began an advance across Iraq, that the United States would be prepared to take targeted military action in Iraq if and when we determined that the situation required it. In recent days, these terrorists have continued to move across Iraq and have neared the city of Erbil, where American diplomats and civilians serve at our consulate and American military personnel advise Iraqi forces. To stop the advance on Erbil, I've directed our military to take targeted strikes against ISIL terrorist convoys should they move toward the city. We intend to stay vigilant and take action if these terrorist forces threaten our personnel or facilities anywhere in Iraq.
I want to bring Gaurav back in. Gaurav, there will possibly be large-scale changes on the ground now. The ISIS has been attacked from the air by the United States, by far the most devastating way to actually attack them. We'll get pictures of that attack in a short while from now. In fact, the Iraq's army chief has in fact just made a statement a short moment ago saying expect large-scale changes on the ground following these airstrikes, Gaurav.
Now, just now the Americans have drawn the red line. You cannot cross this red line. You cannot target American interests in Erbil. And that is exactly what Barack Obama just clarified. Any convoy, any artillery, any weapon system that moves towards American interests, their consulate, their officials, their forces in this region, should a ISIL convoy move in that direction, it will be targeted. Humanitarian aid in that hill where people are trapped without food and water, that's a little too late. That should have happened much earlier. The world, in fact, was looking at America to do something. Many commentators are saying that America delayed its response that led to several innocent lives being lost, but better late than never. What happens now depends on how ISIL responds to this and then the next course of action. But from what sources seem to indicate, from what commentators in the United States seem to indicate, this could only intensify in the times to come.
This is really, really big, and I want to put this in context for our viewers. As Gaurav and I bring you this story, this strike marks the deepest, most substantial US engagement in the country since the US withdrawal of troops in the latter half of 2011. So it's a return in many ways. Even though it doesn't mean more boots on the ground, this is the deepest engagement by the United States in Iraq since that partial withdrawal in 2011. Strategic Affairs Analyst Brahma Chelani is with us on the phone line for a quick word on this. Brahma, what are you making of this particular attack? The first US jet strike against ISIS positions in northern Iraq.
Well, the strike is not a surprise. It has come rather late because ISIS has been making steady progress. It has occupied vast swaths of territory in Syria and Iraq. But the Americans are actually repeating history. If you recall that in Afghanistan, the CIA funding of arms to the Afghan Mujahideen gave rise to the Al-Qaeda. And that in turn led to the present decade-long American war in Afghanistan.
Yes.
ISIS is the creation of those who funded rebels in Syria. This includes the oil sheikdoms like Qatar and Saudi Arabia. They funded these extremists in Syria.
Yes.
And ISIS emerged from those elements. And it's interesting to note that the U.S. is carrying out strikes only in a specific area.
Yes.
Which borders the Kurdish autonomous region in Iraq. But they're not striking ISIS in its heartland, which is in northern Syria.
Is that likely to happen, though, at some point, Brahma? What changes do you foresee on the ground now? The Iraqi army chief has said expect large-scale changes on the ground in the aftermath of this particular airstrike and its implications. What do you think?
These airstrikes by the U.S. are designed to ensure that the Kurdish autonomous region does not crumble. Its army is able to put up reasonable defense.
Yes.
The Americans are not going to strike ISIS in Syria because ISIS, from their perspective, is the counter to Assad and its forces.
Yes.
But the problem is that if you have a very selective approach to these murderous Islamists, there is no way you can actually bring them under control. You can't have a good terrorist, bad terrorist policy, especially in relation to the same organization.
Brahma Chelani, thanks for speaking to us. Stay with us for a moment, Brahma. Gaurav Sawant is with me. He's got a question for you. Gaurav, go ahead.
The strike that is taking place, this is very, very restricted, as you rightly pointed out, only in the Kurdish areas. But the ISIS is carrying out what is being described as a potential genocide of the Yazidis. The refugees are trapped. Should the Americans not be moving in that direction? And do you see that happening in the times to come?
Well, there are several minorities in northern Syria as well as in northern Iraq that are facing persecution and summary executions by the ISIS thugs. And this has been happening for a number of weeks. In fact, there have been pictures of ISIS men carrying the severed heads of their victims. And you know, in the pictures they're seen laughing.
Yes.
These guys are savages. And I think at the end of the day, we will have to assess as to which countries and institutions have helped create these monsters.
Yes.
Because this is not just a simple extremist organization. This is an organization that actually believes in decapitation, in the most barbaric practices. And more worryingly, ISIS now is in charge of the upstream areas along the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers in Syria and Iraq. So potentially, they can use water as a weapon. For example, by capturing Mosul Dam, they are now in a position to cut off power to Baghdad. They're also in a position to unleash massive floods, flash floods downstream in the Shiite areas of Iraq.
Yeah. Well, it's a developing situation, rapidly developing situation. The information that we have is that, Brahma, thanks for joining us on that story. We have Sushant Sareen, Security Affairs Analyst, also with us. I just want to quickly bring in an update. We're getting more information through our affiliates and agencies. The decision to strike was made by the U.S. Central Command Commander under authorization granted to him by the Commander-in-Chief. Two FA-18 aircraft, two FA-18 fighter jets operating from the USS George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier, nuclear-powered aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf, took off at about 6:30 this morning, and they dropped at local time 6:45 on that artillery piece outside of Erbil in northern Iraq. The Islamic rebels apparently had been using this artillery to shell Kurdish forces defending Erbil, where, as you know, US personnel are currently located. Sushant Sareen, how do you see this situation developing now? The deepest US engagement since the withdrawal in 2011.
I guess they're getting pulled in back into Iraq because the conflict out there is an expanding conflict. It's not just limited to Syria. It's entered Iraq. The Sunni areas have already fallen to the ISIS. They are now threatening the Kurd areas, and it's precisely because of the kind of reverses that the Kurd forces were suffering in the last couple of days that I think the American hand has been forced. Also, there is a massive outcry in the U.S. itself over the kind of savagery which Brahma so aptly described right now, over that savagery, and that has forced the hand of the Americans.
Absolutely.
Now, for now, this is a limited strike. But the fact that the ISIS is now threatening Jordan, they are now threatening Lebanon, they've been scrapped out there, and even the Saudis are feeling the pressure now, which means that the Americans will not be able to turn a blind eye to this abomination on mankind for very long. I think they will have to intervene, but that will be really a challenge for the U.S. administration, whether they can enter back in.
Well, they've been pulled in right now. For now, it's a limited strike. It's a developing story. We'll get you more details, also pictures in just a short while from now. Sushant Sareen, thanks very much. Gaurav, also, thanks for joining me on this breaking story. We're going to keep a track of it. It's our big international story, the churn, the geopolitical churn with the U.S. being pulled back into the fight in Iraq.